In the last lecture, we already had started the June onward series. One lecture was completed. Now this is our second lecture in the June onward series of the most important current affairs. Today also we will be seeing the environment related current affairs of the June month only. These topics were completed in the last lecture. Today we are going to see almost 6 topics. One is Nature Index. This is about research publication, journals and everything. According to the research level in your country, Nature, that journal you already know, Nature publication, that has created an index. We will see where does India stand in this index and which countries are at the top. Second is oil spill in Russia's Arctic region. An incident happened and an accident happened actually. Environment Performance Index, obviously very important index. We will see that. Desertification and Drought Day. We will see the detail why desertification and drought day is celebrated on June 17th. Loss of ice cover in Arctic Sea. After so many decades in your 2019 summer, the loss of Arctic ice sea is to the greatest extent. We will see what is that and how is the climate of the global world is threatened by this phenomenon. One world, one sun, one grid plan. So in June month, your Ministry and New and Renewable Resources talked about one world, one sun and one grid plan. But now it becomes even more important because PM Modi in the Independence Day speech has asked the world to unite for one world, one sun and one grid plan. So very important topic for your prelims 2020. We will see all these 6 topics. So let's start our lecture with the first topic, that is Nature Index 2020. Before understanding the position of India in the global world regarding research and publications, first of all understand what is this Nature Index. It is a database of author affiliation information collated from research articles published in an independently selected group of 82 high quality science journals. What does this mean? Nature Index will see that in different science journal which countries' publications are authentic and which countries' publications are more. They will collect data from 82 high quality only science journals, and then they will conclude that what is the research publication, research journalism, research journal situation in a country or output of the research in a country. But this index is prepared by Nature Research. You already know the Nature, very famous journal, research journal that is based in your Western world, Germany and USA. One is headquarter and one is where it is based actually. So Nature is so respected in the global science world that because it started first publication in 1869 only, such old thing. So Nature Research is compiling this database from different 82 high quality science journals. It is seeing their pages, it is seeing their publications and coming to the conclusion that which country is doing good in research publication. So your Nature Research is what? Nature Research is a division of International Scientific Publishing Company, a Springer Nature, which I already told you about. And your Springer Nature is a weekly, okay, not monthly, weekly multidisciplinary academic journal. So it doesn't mean only biological sciences. Nature publishes article on multidiscipline. Now this index, Nature Index 2020, this index is also updated monthly and also released annually. Okay, so updated monthly, but the final release happens in 1 year time, okay, annually. So the thing we are discussing here, Nature Index 2020, that is annual indexing. And index provides what? You can't know according to research journals because you are selecting only 82 high quality science journals, right? So you will not be knowing all the research happening in a country or a region, but still it will provide some real time proxy of high quality research output of a country. And this also you should know that it will tell you about the institutional publication. For example, your IISc Bangalore will be ranked in the global world. It will be compared with the different institutions of the world in science journal and science research. It ranks the countries also, so national level also and a regional level also. So India will get a rank here. Your IISc will get a rank here in the institutional level. It serves as an indicator of high quality research in the natural and physical sciences. Okay, natural and physical sciences, high quality research it will see, because only 82 high quality science journals data you are seeing. So only the high quality research will be seen in this index. Okay, this is detail about the index. Now understand what was the index and where does India rank. First of all, Let us understand what is the metrics of the index, how it does the measurement. Index provides several metrics. Okay, it will see mainly your final result will be the research output of a country and collaboration in different sectors. So its metrics, its measurement criteria, the index criteria are article count, how many articles published. For example, I have also published a research article, so my article will be counted if it is published in a very good journal. Fractional count, multilateral, bilateral collaboration scores. Do you need to remember this? Not at all, don't worry. Globally, the top rated Indian institutions in this list are, so when the top rating was done, that which Indian institutions are the top, so you do not understand that any institution was in top 100, no, but still the top 3 ranking institutions coming from India were your CSIR. It has various laboratories, all those publications were counted, so CSIR in India is top. In global ranking it is even 150 rank below. Okay, so India is not in top 100, India is not even in top 150, but still in India CSIR was at the top, IISc Bangalore was the second position, and your TIFR, Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, it was at the third position. If you see the overall ranking of India, I told you about the institutional ranking, so institutional ranking is this. If you want to know the world level institutional ranking, it is this. You do not need to remember that, that's why I have included in slide, but I am not going to explain. But China Academy of Sciences is at the first position. In your country, CSIR, IISc and TIFR are at the top position respectively. If you see the ranking of India as a nation, India is at the 12th place in the index in science research output. Overall output, India is at the 12th position. So what about the other nations? Top 5 nations are United States of America is at the first position. See, in the institutional ranking, there is a China Academy of Science at the first position. But at the national level of ranking, United States of America is at the first position, China is at the second position, and Germany is at the third position. This is all about Nature Index 2020. No detail is needed more. Our next topic is oil spill in Russia's Arctic region. Russia's Arctic region. You already know Russia's presence in Arctic region. There is a power plant in a place called as Norilsk. In that power plant, there is a leakage. Leakage happened, and almost 20,000 tons of fuel from this power plant situated in Norilsk went into a river. Now that river is known as Ambaranya River, and that river, Ambaranya River, goes to Lake Pyasino. From Lake Pyasino originates the river Pyasina River, and now that Pyasina River goes to Kara. So you understand the impacts. Your power plant is located in Norilsk region, fine, no problem, but it leaked to a river. You see the image. This is leak of the fuel. What kind of fuel came out from this plant? It was diesel oil. It was diesel which leaked into the Ambaranya River in the Norilsk region. Before understanding other facts, let us see the map of this region and try to understand it in the context of Arctic Ocean or Kara Sea. First of all, see the image of the oil leak. This is Ambaranya River, okay? Somewhere here your power plant is located in Norilsk region. Diesel leaked out from here. The reason I will tell you in the next slide, don't worry, and came like this. Now it went to Lake Pyasino. I will show you the images in various contexts. So this whole area is Norilsk region. Whole area is in Norilsk region. Here is your site of oil spill. Here was the factory. Oil spill happened here, and it went into your river, Ambaranya River. Okay. Now the Ambaranya River goes into the Lake Pyasino. So it reached the Lake Pyasino, from where your river Pyasino has basin, and Pyasino goes into the Kara Sea. More mapping. Now say this image. Here is the site of the oil spill. This is a macro image. Okay. So from here it reaches the Kara Sea. Now see this image from the BBC. It will be very clear. Your Norilsk region. Here is the power plant. It leaked and went to the Ambaranya River. The image I showed to you. This is the approximate location of the oil spill. So this is Ambaranya region. This is going into the Lake Pyasino, right? From Lake Pyasino originates the river river Pyasino, and goes into the Kara Sea. So this is the place exactly. This is the place exactly. It will go like this in the Kara Sea, and Kara Sea is part of the Arctic Ocean. See, this is your Kara Sea. From here the leakage and all has happened. So Kara Sea is part of Arctic Ocean in the polar region. This is Russia's part, Novaya Zemlya. This is Kara Strait. You can see the Ob river here. It comes like this, Ob river here. This is Novaya Zemlya and this is Semaya Zemlya. These islands are to be remembered. Here this is Svalbard. Svalbard has seed factory, you remember, in the frozen condition seeds of the all over the world are kept here. This Svalbard seed facility is in Norway, so this is part of Norway. Now as the mapping work is completed, understood, let's understand the topic very well. So now start again. Around 20,000 tons of fuel. What kind of fuel I told you? Diesel. There was a power plant, it was using diesel as the fuel. There is a leak happening here. Leak happened already. So this plant is located in Norilsk region, okay? And it leaked into the river, and that river is Ambaranya river. Following this, Russia declared a state of emergency because this was very massive. You can see the color change in the river. So every organism inside this will die because there will not be oxygen mixing with the water. Oil flows upward, okay? Oil flows in the up. It will be on the surface. So water and air mixing will not happen. The fish and every marine organism will not get the oxygen, and after getting devoid of oxygen, all of them will die. Also it will reach to the ocean through the Kara Sea, and your polar region is very pristine. Having oil leak there means something very urgent. That is why Russia declared a state of emergency following the massive oil spill. So this oil spill, again I tell you, happened in the Norilsk region, Ambaranya river, and Ambaranya river flows into the Lake Payasino, I told you, and Lake Payasino serves as the basin for the Payasina river. So Payasina river also got the oil. Now Payasina river goes into the Kara Sea and it is part of Arctic Ocean. Here is the main problem. What happened exactly? People are saying, the researchers and scientists and evaluators are saying that it was actually collapse of foundation. The foundation of the power plant collapsed, and that happened because permafrost melted, and melting of the permafrost created water, and the corrosion of the tank bottom happened, and then that's why the collapse of the foundation happened of the power plant. Why permafrost melted? Why? Because your Arctic area is also seeing unusually warm weather this year because of global warming. There is lots of things happening because of global warming. One of the impact also is that your Arctic area permafrost is melting. That melted permafrost in the form of water corroded the foundation of your power plant in Norilsk region, and that is why the oil spill happened. So now the very important topic, value addition. What is permafrost? Permafrost is a categorization. Permafrost is a categorization of any ground. It is generally soil only, but it is so cold that for 2 years, at least 2 years straight, it will be frozen below 32 degree Fahrenheit or 0 degree Celsius. That is the ice melting point or freezing point of water. So below 0 degree Celsius, that is in frozen condition, this ground will remain for 2 years, and that place is recognized as, categorized as permafrost. You can see this is soil, okay? This is soil. You will see some vegetation, not a problem. In Arctic region also you will see some vegetation. That is why some organisms are living there. So this is your active layer which you see. Here you will enjoy, okay, fine, some good grasses and all. But before that, below that, you can see this is area of permafrost. This is completely frozen area. This is ice wedge created by the permafrost. If this permafrost is melted, it will create water, and that water corroded the power plant's foundation. So criteria for the permafrost: any ground that remains completely frozen for at least 2 years straight is known as permafrost. It is generally in your Russian region only, because this region, this ground layer will be created only in those areas which are very cold, that should have high mountains when you compare to Earth's other latitudes, and high mountains and higher latitudes also, because it should be polar area, it should be very cold, and above that it should be high mountain. So where do we have these conditions? In the North Pole and South Pole. In the South Pole you do not have so much land, right? In the North Pole you have at least Russia and all. So in North Pole, in Russia region, polar region, you have this permafrost. Although the ground is frozen, permafrost regions are not always covered in snow. I told you, this region will not be covered in snow. You will see vegetation and all. But before that, the ground is very frozen. Permafrost is made of what? Normal soil, nothing else. But in freezing condition. Why freezing condition? But whatever water you have in between this soil particle and rock particles, that water will be frozen. That is why. You can't freeze rocks, right? So, it is a combination of soil, rocks, sand, and all these things of soil is held together by frozen ice, frozen water. The soil and ice permafrostly stay frozen all year long. So this has been frozen maybe many 50 years or 100 years or more than that. Okay, but criteria is that at least 2 years it should be a straightforward in frozen condition. Some 55% of Russia's territory, Siberia region of the Russia, it is in permafrost condition. And problem is that in this region of Russia, you have oil and gas fields also. That is why you have diesel power plant there. So it is a indication also that if you go in that area, do commercial mining and oil extraction, gas extraction, that might permanently damage the permafrost, and if that is melted, it will be another loss to global climate. As Earth's climate is warming, permafrost is thawing. Thawing means becoming not in frozen condition. Ice thawing, right? Thawing is, it was in solid state, now it is melting to the water. That means that ice inside the permafrost melts, leaving behind water and soil. This is thawing. So do you want to see the area, Siberia and permafrost area? Let's see that. Already told you almost 55% of Russian area is in permafrost or Siberia area. You see this? This is almost the entire Siberia. That is why Russia, being a transcontinental country in Europe, in Asia, the entire population of Russia lives in this area of the Europe only. This far east area is seldomly inhabited because this is in frozen condition. But yes, some people live there, but in very, very few people. So it spans much of Eurasia and Northern Asia. Eurasia is area between Europe and Asia. This is Eurasia also. The old, ancient and medieval civilizations who attacked India lived in this Eurasia region, whole Eurasia region. UG tribes and everything which came to India, it lives in Saka. So they lived in Eurasia region. So lower portion will also be counted as Eurasia, and the Siberian region will also be counted as Eurasia only. The territory of Siberia extends eastwards from the Ural Mountains to the watershed between Pacific and Arctic drainage basin. Here you have Ural Mountain, here, okay. So Siberian region will extend to the eastward side of this. See, Siberia accounts for 77% of Russia's land area, but it is home to only 23% of the country's population, just 33 million people. Country's population is 33 million, right? So out of that, 23% population only lives in the Siberian region. Density is 3 people per square kilometer. Now at some point of life, you might read that there is Russia station Vostok, which is the coldest place of the earth. You might get confused that, okay, fine, I read about Siberia, I read about permafrost, and I also read about your Russia and the coldest place. So it must be in the North Pole, near the Arctic Ocean, in the Russia Siberia area. No, the coldest place recorded ever, the coldest temperature, see, the lowest air temperature ever recorded by a weather station, minus 89 degrees Celsius, was recorded there at Russia's Vostok station. But this station is not in the northern hemisphere. In Antarctica, various countries have their research stations, right? India also has research stations at Antarctica. Russia also has research station. The Russia's Vostok station is the place which has recorded the lowest temperature ever in 1983, but it is not in northern hemisphere. It is in your southern hemisphere. Somewhere here it is located, Vostok station. This is your Antarctica. Okay, this is not Arctic area, but it is also a place of Russia, but in the southern hemisphere. Now, as you know about the Russia's Vostok station, you should be very curious about the India's station, because this is a global commons, right? Antarctica is a global commons. It is for every country. Does India also have research station there? Yes, India has. India's Bharti Research Station in Antarctica. This is the image. This is your Indian research station. Okay. See, the people live like this here. Some of the people, 4 to 5 people, are always there researching, scientists mainly. India's Bharti Research Station in Antarctica. The country has 2 research stations in Antarctica. One is Bharti. It was commissioned in 2012, and before that in 1988 only, when Virat Kohli was born, when Prevention of Corruption Act came, in that year only India had one installed research station in Antarctica, that is known as MATRI. It is functioning since then. So who takes this responsibility of scientists traveling from India to your Antarctica? There is one organization. I am going to relate so many things now, so just be patient. That institute in India is NCPOR, that takes care of travel and transit accommodation from Goa to Antarctica. We go to Cape Town first, that is in South Africa, and from there you go to Antarctica. So which institute takes care of these travels? NCPOR. What is NCPOR? This is this National Center for Polar and Ocean Research. That is why your Gangotri and Maitri are taken care of by this National Center for Polar Ocean and Research, NCPOR. Its office is in Vasco da Gama. That is why tour and travel to Antarctica is happening through Vasco da Gama Port, Goa. It is an autonomous institution of the Department of Ocean Development. And where is this Department of Ocean Development? Department of Ocean Development very obviously is present in Ministry of Earth Sciences, Government of India. So India has an Indian Antarctic program. That Indian Antarctic program responsibility is by National Center for Polar Ocean and Research, that is part of Ocean Development, Department of Ocean Development of the Ministry of Earth Sciences. When was Indian Antarctic program initiated? It was initiated in 1981. Okay, first Indian expedition to Antarctica went only in 1981, when our program, Indian Arctic program, started. The program gained global acceptance with India signing the Antarctic Treaty. There is treaty, India signed Antarctic Treaty, and India could also now send their researchers to the Antarctica. So first Antarctic research base. First Antarctic research base was not Gangotri, not Maitri. It was Dakshin Gangotri, and it was created in 1983. Dakshin Gangotri was then given up. It was not functional anymore. So after Dakshin Gangotri was, you can say, decommissioned, right? Dakshin Gangotri was decommissioned. It was superseded by Maitri base that I told you in 1988 or 1989. And now the newest base commissioned in 2012 is Bharati. How do you create these things? You create it out of shipping containers. You see shipping containers? So researchers will live there and do some experiments. So what kind of experiments they do? Atmospheric, biological, climate related, weather related, earth, these researchers, after doing the research there, they are also trying to understand the function and how your monsoon is affected. So they will understand everything, because they are doing research in South Pole, the coldest place. So they will also tell you about monsoon, how it is affected, how your El Nino is working and everything, the ocean circulation, ocean currents. Medical science research is also being done, because this is a very cold area. Total 30 scientific expeditions to Antarctic had happened till 2010, and now after that data we do not have, don't worry about it. Here is your newest one, Bharati station. Beside that only you have Vostok station, which recorded the lowest temperature on Earth. So understood everything very clearly. Now move to the next topic. Our third topic is Environmental Performance Index 2020. This is released biannually. What does the term biannually mean? Biannually means in 2 years. Once in 2 years, one time in 2 years means biannually. And biannually means twice in 1 year. So this Environmental Performance Index 2020 is released biannually. That means if it is released in 2020, the last report came in 2018 and the next report will come in, the next index will come in 2022. So is not it important? Yes, very important. This is released by Yale University and Columbia University. Both of them are situated in United States of America. But also apart from these two universities, World Economic Forum also collaborates. है ना? And the Joint Research Center of European Commission also collaborates. About European Commission, I have already told you before, so I'm not going to explain you. Just to give a reminder, European Commission is the executive arm of your European Union. That's it. So how many institutes are here? First is Yale University, second is Columbia University. These are educational institutions and research institutions. Fine. Third is World Economic Forum, situated in Switzerland. And fourth is Joint Research Center of European Commission. European Commission is part of European Union. It is the executive arm of European Unions. So these four institutions release this once in 2 years biennial environmental performance index. And now the 2020 index has come. What is the rank of India? 168. India secured 168th rank out of 180 countries. So 180 countries only, and in that India got the 168th rank. Let us celebrate this. Compared to 177 in 2018. So there is an improvement. Yes, large improvement actually. 177 to 168 India has reached with a score of 27.6 out of 100. If this be the matric score or inter score or your school score, you will fail. You will not pass in 26.6. That is why India has failed and got the 168th rank with a score of 26.6 out of 100. All South Asian countries except Afghanistan were ahead of India in the ranking. Afghanistan is also facing problem of environment. There is first of all, there is no civil order in Afghanistan, so people are doing everything. They are growing your opium, and also your Hindu Kush mountain is melting. I already told you in the previous lecture that Karakoram is gaining ice, that is fine, but Hindu Kush mountain is melting and it might change the climate of Afghanistan, weather of Afghanistan. And it might happen that in some years Afghanistan people along the Hindu Kush mountain, they will grow some rice and wheat. Might happen. But anyway, Afghanistan is the only country in South Asia. In South Asia, which countries are included? Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, your Sri Lanka, and also you can include Maldives. But Myanmar is not included. Myanmar is included in Southeast Asian country. Any country left? No, I don't think so. I told you about Nepal and Bhutan. Yes. So in South Asian countries except Afghanistan, all countries are better performing in Environmental Performance Index 2020, mainly released by World Economic Forum and your Joint Research Center of European Commission. It indexes how many performances? See, categories, 11 issue categories are there. You do not need to know about that, don't worry, but I might read that. 11 issue categories are there, and in that we have 32 performance indicators. So that means 11 issue categories is the main thing. Inside that you have various criterias, and all those criterias counted together are 32 performance indicators. So we will see 32 performance indicators and we will rank countries. What are the 11 issue categories? Environmental health, it will have air quality, sanitation, drinking water, heavy metal and waste management, and ecosystem vitality, liveliness of ecosystem, biodiversity and habitat, ecosystem services. What is ecosystem services? The things you get from the nature. Okay, the things you get from the nature, because ecosystem is also providing you service. Fisheries, climate change, pollution, emission, agriculture and waste water resources, all these things are not to be remembered, but you should know the rank of India. You should know the publishing authorities, this 4 in number. And also you should know that India is ranked just above Afghanistan in South Asia. Otherwise every country in South Asia is performing better than India. The 2020 EPI Environmental Performance Index features new metrics that gauge waste management is included, carbon dioxide emission from land cover change. Okay, because you are degrading the forest, you are doing agriculture in those places where there was forest, you are creating industries in those places who were having forest, you are degrading the coastal areas by creating travel and tourism facilities. So you are changing the land cover. that land cover change might lead to more carbon dioxide emission. Waste management can happen. So these new metrics are included. Black carbon emission is also included. These are all important drivers of climate change today. Black carbon emission because of the factories and industries. Denmark ranks 1 in Environment Performance Index. These Scandinavian countries are already ahead in all the indexes. That was all about Environment Performance Index. You do not need to know anything. Now desertification and drought day. When it was observed? It is observed on June 17 every year. June 17 every year is observed as desertification and drought day. Where there will be desertification, there will be drought, right? Might not happen if the government is making very good policies and providing food and feed to the people. Then desertification might not lead to drought, but generally the natural drought will happen when there is desertification. So first of all, understand in a general term what is desertification. Obviously this is degradation of the land. There was good fertile land, and now you are sowing something the land was not suited for. For example, in Punjab region you are growing rice, taking lots of water from the soil. Now that water uptake is creating salty condition in the soil. The soil is becoming arid, and some years down the line that arid soil might become desertic. So desertification is the degradation of land in arid, semi-arid and dry subhumid areas. It is caused primarily by human activities and also the climate variations. For example, monsoon doesn't happen in India for 100 years. Maybe that whole India becomes a desert. And also the human activities, for example, Punjab example. In south area people are growing sugarcane, but the groundwater doesn't have the water. Ground doesn't have the water. So desertification might happen in the South India also. So it can happen in arid, semi-arid and dry subhumid areas. So this is the necessity. If lots of rain is happening, desertification will not happen. Okay. Desertification does not refer to the expansion of existing desert. So tomorrow you have in Indian map, if you draw the map of India, okay, so you have this place. Okay, let's go above that. Here is the Nepal. A rough sketch of your Indian map. So you have in India Pakistan region Thar desert. So if Thar deserts tomorrow expands because of natural forces of wind, okay, wind and maybe rivers, you cannot call this desert. This is desertification. Okay. Desertification does not refer to the expansion of existing deserts. It occurs because of dry land ecosystem which cover 1/3 of the world's land area, are extremely vulnerable to overexploitation and inappropriate land use. So desertification is not the extension of your already existing desert. Desertification happens in dry land ecosystem which are already vulnerable, and these ecosystems are present in 1/3 of the world area. So 1/3 of world area is not desert, natural desert or extension of it. There is dry land ecosystem, fine, but you are doing the extreme overexploitation, inappropriate use, then the desertification will happen. That is why we are celebrating these days to create awareness. That is why we have the bodies like UNCCD, United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, that came from the Rio Earth Summit in 1992. Before this year, before 2020, this day was celebrated as World Day to Combat Desertification and Drought. Now we are calling it Desertification and Drought Day. Understand the difference? Before it was World Day to Combat Desertification and Drought. Now it is Desertification and Drought Day. Simple term. To promote public awareness of international efforts to combat desertification, SDG 15. In the last lecture, I explained you everything about SDG, so I'm not going to explain that. But you have the chart of SDG. Just in that, see the SDG 15. Okay, you may not be able to directly relate, so SDG 15 you should see. SDG 15 says life on land. Now life on land is obviously, when you talk about the land, you will talk about the desertification also. That is why if you create awareness against desertification and you try to combat the desertification, your life on land SDG 15 can be fulfilled by 2030. That is why we are working towards it. So do some intelligent work. Tell me what will be the sustainable development goal fulfilled if we take care of the permafrost. That is also be for the SDG 15, because permafrost is life on earth thing only. There are various organisms living in this polar area in the Siberian region. If you see some in Siberian tiger only, okay, and many other organisms, foxes. What was the theme of 2020 desertification and drought day? It was food, feed and fiber, the links between consumption and land. So the plants have fiber, they provide feed to various organisms also, industries also, and food is already provided. This year's observance is focused on changing public attitudes to the leading driver of desertification and land degradation. It is saying that public attitude needs to be changed, because the leading driver of desertification and land degradation is public only, humanity only. Humanity's relentless production and consumption is causing the desertification of the land. So the most responsible driver, you can say, of the desertification is human only. So human needs to be aware and they should change their public attitude. That is how we can control and combat the desertification. Remember that: food, feed and fiber, sustainable production and consumption. So I will try to explain also that why this theme is food, feed and fiber. This should be very clear in your mind. I just went to this website, okay, UNCCD, United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. I have explained you this in the previous lectures, so don't worry about that. Food, feed and fiber message seeks to provoke changes in the diet. You change your diet, okay, diet behavior. For example, you do not do the food wastage, okay, buy from the local market. So this is your feed, buy from the local market. Food is that, do not waste it. And what is fiber? Swapping clothes instead of always buying new, okay. So you do not become that king or queen who buys clothes every new day, because finally many fibers are coming from the plant world only, right? The cotton, for example, silk also, the silkworms are feeding on plants only. So if you cut those plants, desertification will happen. So you have to do this food, feed and fiber control. So those resources will be freed up your plants, that can lower the carbon emission from the earth, and the desertification will also reduce. That is all about desertification and drought day, June 17. So now the next question arises that why do we celebrate World Day to Combat Desertification or Desertification and Drought Day on 17th June? This was because United Nations General Assembly made a resolution. The resolution came in January 1995, but it came after the day when, that means June 17 is selected as the day because United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification was drafted on this day. More explanation here. I had already told you that it came from Rio Conference, United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. The convention, the only convention stemming from a direct recommendation of the Rio Conference Agenda 21, was adopted in Paris, France on June 17, 1994. It came into force in 1996, but it was adopted in Paris, France in 1994, June 17th. That is why we celebrate World Day to Combat Desertification and Drought, or World Drought and Desert Day, on June 17th. I have already explained everything about Agenda 21 in the last lecture, so that is done. Here is our next topic: loss of ice cover in Arctic Sea. Just now I had shown you the images of Arctic Sea mapping where Kara Sea is also present. This is your Arctic Sea. Previously the ice cover was like this, see. Now in this year the ice cover has shrunk like this. Very small amount is left, and if it goes by like this, by 2050 your whole Arctic ice sea will be depleted. That is the condition, that is the gravity of the situation. Anyway, you remember some time ago I told you about the National Center for Polar and Ocean Research in Ministry of Earth Sciences, NCPOR. So see, our organization, our institute has become so good, so big, that it is conducting research in Arctic Sea and Antarctic Sea also. And this loss of ice cover in Arctic Sea, that estimation, that research has come from your own institute, National Center for Polar Ocean Research Center. This is not from any American or Russian institute. It has found, the NCPOR has found that it is the largest decline in the Arctic Sea in last 41 years, and this is happening because of global warming. And the global warming is leading to localized increase in evaporation, air humidity, cloud cover, and rainfall. And when the rainfall happens, the ice will be depleted. This is all because of global warming. Your NCPOR is saying that. NCPOR is situated in Ministry of Earth Sciences. Detail were done earlier only when we detailed about the Gangotri and Maitri and everything. So Arctic sea ice is sensitive indicator of climate change. This is the most pristine area. When this is melting, that means that the entire global warming is happening, and it has a strong retaliatory effects on other components of the climate system, because many oceanic currents originate from these cold areas. When this area warms up, the oceanic currents will also warm up. That will lead to weather change, that will lead to climate change, and many of the oceans which were cold, they will also get warmed. Many tropical cyclones will then come. All these things can happen, all these climate changes can happen, and it can have a retaliatory effect if your Arctic sea ice is depleted. What was the observation of the NCPOR? It said that largest decline in Arctic sea in the past 41 years happened in July 2019. So this happened in last year, July 2019, but the report has come now in your June month 2020. In the last 40 years, means 1979 to 2018 data it has taken, sea ice has been declining at the rate of 4.7%. Just like when sometimes economy grows negatively, it is growing negatively, minus 4.7% per decade. And if you see in July 2019, why this is 41 year high? This decline in July 2019 compared to previous 10 years, that is July 2009 and July 2019. If you see this decade, this is minus 13%. Okay. If this trend continues, there will be no ice left in the Arctic Sea by 2050. It is being said by NCPOR according to their estimation. Obviously, this will be dangerous to humanity and the entire environment. The research was based on surface warming and the changes in global atmospheric circulation. Global atmospheric circulation is also affected by this area, jet stream and everything. See, 1984 it was like this. Okay, and now very small area, right? This is your Greenland. Why this is happening? This is happening because there has been an increase in the duration of summer because of global warming. In summer also and autumn season also there is global warming. There is increase in temperature, that is melting the ice, and the local weather and climate over the Arctic Ocean is also changing. Okay, and its marginal seas, for example Kara Sea and everything, they are changing the climate also. Their condition is also changing. So it again says that if you lose ice in the Arctic Sea, that will have effects on your global climate, such as prevention or reduction of heat and momentum, water vapor. Other material exchanges between atmosphere and the sea can also change because the sea surface temperature is changing. So material exchange, for example oxygen. When your sea warms, water is what? If you decrease the temperature of the water, it will have more oxygen. If you increase the temperature of the water, the oxygen will be liberated from water. And now the plant and animal life in oceanic water is dependent on oxygen. If you warm the sea, there will be coral bleaching in the other areas. It's not the area where coral is present. Coral is generally in tropical areas, but still the oceanic currents will come, right? The warm currents that will impact your coral. They might go under bleaching. The 2019 sea ice extent tied to second lowest sea ice minimum record. Okay, it was almost comparable to the second lowest sea ice minimum record. When was that happening? We do not need to know that. This year, northern hemisphere experienced record high temperature rise, especially during the spring and summer months. Also, one more thing happened, that the ozone depletion was also at the highest level. So about that I have already completed in March to May current affairs. A little bit detailing about that NCPOR again, National Center for Polar Ocean and Research. I have included in this slide, so I will explain again. So National Center for Polar Ocean and Research was established as an autonomous research and development institution under the Ministry of Earth Sciences in 1998. Before that only we had sent our research station in Antarctica. Remember that. When our polar research started. India's Antarctic plan, right? It is located in Goa. I had already explained. Earlier, it was known as National Center for Antarctic Ocean Research, NCAOR. Okay, now the name has changed to NCPOR. Why? Previously, it was concerned with Antarctic only. Now we are dealing with Arctic also. So that is why we have made it Polar. National Center for Polar Ocean and Research. Previously, it was focused on Antarctic. So it was called NCAOR. Now NCPOR, because we are focusing on both the poles. So polar and southern ocean realms, everything it deals with. It also sees El Nino, your southern oscillation. So it is kind of a nodal agency for planning, promoting and coordinating and executing the entire gamut of your polar and southern ocean scientific research in the country. We do not have a station in northern hemisphere, okay? That is almost sea. If you want to create a station in northern hemisphere, you should have some commons, land commons, but it is not present in northern hemisphere. These are all under countries. Some islands, for example, Jevaya Somaya, I already told you, the Svalbard Sea Facility Island, these are in the different countries. These are not global commons, but in the southern hemisphere you have the land. So global commons is created. Russia's Vostok station, India's Gangotri station, Maitri station, before that Dakshin Gangotri station. Okay, and it is also associated with logistic activities. I told you that when your research scientists go in the southern hemisphere in the Antarctica, they leave from Vasco da Gama port in Goa, then they go to Cape Town, Africa. All this travel, and I won't call it tourism, but all this travel is taken care of by your NCPOR only. So they are associated with logistic activities. Then they will create from the shipping containers, they will create living facilities for the scientists and researchers. Everything is taken care of by NCPOR. Understood everything? Let's move to the next topic. Next topic is very important for your prelims, very important. Previously, when this topic One World, One Sun, One Grid plan came, it came in June when Ministry of New and Renewable Resources New and Renewable Energy said something about One World, One Sun and One Grid, so that the entire world's solar power plant energy can be put in one grid and supplied to the world. There will be selling and buying everything, but one grid can be created for the entire world. That was the plan of the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. One World, One Sun, One Grid plan. But now during the Independence Day speech, PM Modi, respected PM Modi, has announced this again. One World, One Sun and One Grid on 15th August. So now this becomes very important. So Prime Minister Modi said in his Independence Day address, he mentioned about the mega plan. This is a mega plan, worldwide plan. One Sun, One World, One Grid. This is such a big plan that we should also remember the abbreviation. One Sun, One World and One Grid. Grid is what? I will show you what does a grid look like. This is just like electricity grid. So you have the solar panels here. Energy will come from wiring from every solar panel. They will be put in the grid. This is the grid. And now this grid, the plan is that whole worldwide at the global level we will connect the grid. These are your solar parks, the big solar parks. Anyway, the idea was first floated by PM Modi in 2018 only, during the first assembly of the International Solar Alliance. When first assembly of International Solar Alliance happened in Gurgaon, which is the headquarter of ISA. International Solar Alliance was created during the UNFCCC COP21 meeting that happened in France, Paris. That time, France President or Prime Minister, the head of the state, and our PM Modi together inaugurated this International Solar Alliance. I'm going to do the detailing about the International Solar Alliance, so don't worry about that. But during the 21st Conference of the Parties of UNFCCC, this Solar Alliance, International Solar Alliance, came into the picture. Any country partially or completely situated inside your in the region of your Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn and Tropic of Cancer, any country situated partially or wholly inside this can become a member of this International Solar Alliance. So officially announced during the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Paris in 2015, that was COP21. ISA is a partnership of solar resource rich countries. Obviously those countries are getting more light. So what will OSOWOG do? This One World, One Sun, One Grid plan will do what? According to the draft plan of the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy that came in June, it said that we have an ambitious plan. We will connect 140 countries through a common grid that will be used to transfer only solar power. Such a big plan, 140 countries having common grid. energy input from the solar power plants. That is really a very good plan and very big plan, and very ambitious also, because we are not able to even connect our national power plants in one grid. But anyway, mantra is that the sun never sets. So whatever will happen to the humanity, whatever will happen to the your non-renewable resources, sun will never set. So there will be a constant, it will be constant at some geographical location. And poles can have nights of 6 months, but otherwise other countries will have some sun at some point of time in the year, at any given point of time, with India at the fulcrum, because India is announcing it. The solar spectrum can easily be divided in two broad zones. One zone is far east, one zone is far west. Far east, which you would include countries like Myanmar, Vietnam, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Southeast Asian nation. Far west, Middle East and African region. Now the plan is divided in 3 phases. This you need to remember. Phase 1, it will connect the Indian grid. First of all, we will connect our grid only, okay, because we are taking the leadership. So first of all, we will create Indian grid with grids in West Asia, for example Saudi Arabia and other countries, Oman, Yemen, whatever be the countries in the Saudi Arabia area, Iran also maybe. So we will first of all connect Indian grid with, this is India, okay. So this is your lovely India. So first of all, you connect the all grids of India, then you go to West Asia. This is the phase 1, okay. In phase 1 only, not West Asia, India will be connected to West Asia, then India will be connected to South Asia. That means you connect you connect your Maldives, you connect to Sri Lanka, you connect to your Bhutan, you connect to your Nepal, right? You connect to that's all Bangladesh in this area. Then you do the connection with Southeast Asia, that means Myanmar and CLMBT, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar is already connected here. Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Vietnam, Thailand, all these countries can be connected Southeast Asia to share solar and other renewable energy resources. So if the need be, other renewable energy resources will also be connected in this grid. Now the phase 2 is very ambitious, connects the first phase nations with the African pool of renewable resources. So here you have your, in the West Asia, below that you have the Africa continent, here is the West Asia. So African continent will be connected from this West Asia, and phase 3 will be the final step of global interconnection. Now you can connect the all over the world, a grid will be made, a common grid. So this is such an ambitious plan, phase 1, phase 2 and phase 3. Phase 1, West Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia. Phase 2, Africa, and phase 3, the entire world will be connected in a common grid. It is for the solar energy, but if the need be, the other renewable resources energy will be also connected in this grid. So what are the significance? One significance is that when you increase the project size, your cost and efficiency, cost benefit increases, right? And your efficiency increases. So reduced project cost, because such a big plan, so investment will also happen in the bulk. Interconnectivity, so it will do away with the problem of isolation of the projects, because more cost is involved in isolated project. It will bring project cost at lower side. Economy of the scale you call it, right? Higher efficiency and increased asset utilization, because you have interconnection. So tomorrow suppose India is having the surplus of solar energy, because India is already creating such big solar power plants. If they are implemented, if they start their production, and if the cost becomes low, might be that India becomes a surplus solar energy producer. So surplus energy will be utilized, increased asset utilization for all the participating entities. Tomorrow if India is having less of it, India can borrow from the other countries, because everything is connected. It will allow national renewable energy management centers in India to grow as regional and global management centers, because India is taking the leadership. So your own country's renewable energy management centers will grow, they will develop, because you are dealing with regional and global management centers now. They will also have the exchange of information and exchange of the research, exchange of knowledge among them. It will help all the participating entities in attracting investment, already told you, because such a huge production, such a huge plan will need investment. So countries will benefit, GDP will rise, investment in renewable energy, the green bonds will increase, as well as utilizing skills. Government is already training people in solar skills. Your some African countries are also doing very good. Technology and finances, everything will have some boost. Now I want to share with you a very good information. This is from Hindu only. Oh, subscription problem. News was that Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Sunday interacted with Solar Mamas. Who are Solar Mamas? First of all, when this news came? This news came July 10, 2016. But Solar Mamas are very famous. You see this fabrication and everything? This is regarding solar power plants and solar panels and other connections. So PM Modi interacted with Solar Mamas. Okay, these were a group of nearly 30 rural women solar engineers from 6 African countries, and their training has been done in Jaipur's Barefoot College. You know Jaipur Barefoot College? Jaipur Barefoot College in Rajasthan, in Tilonia village, okay, or the center in Tanzania. So either they were trained in Jaipur's Barefoot College, India provided the vocational training, or they were trained in Tanzania, okay, Tilonia village or Tanzania center. This Barefoot College in Rajasthan's Tilonia village, and some training was done in Tanzania also. These solar mamas are normal women from your African nation, 6 African nation, and they have been given training for fabrication, installation, use, repair and maintain the solar lanterns and household solar lighting systems in their villages. So see, lots of work is going in African countries also. So those people will get a job there utilizing their skills. That's why I told about you this interesting point. Now let us learn about International Solar Alliance, because this all is coming through International Solar Alliance. So you should know about the International Solar Alliance. One introduction, I have already told you about this much. So this is a treaty based international organization. That means everybody will be signing, the government will be meeting for solar resource rich countries which either lie completely or partly between Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. This is Tropic of Cancer, this is of Tropic of Capricorn. So all these countries will be included, all these countries, India almost completely, completely, that means not completely, but yeah, your Tropic of Cancer is kind of middle in the India, a little bit in the north. So all these countries will be included because they are solar resource rich. This was announced, already told you, President of France was present in 2015 because Paris COP21 was happening in Paris. It was the 21st session of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. In that moment, PM Modi and France's previous president, now the previous president has changed to your Emmanuel Macron, but that time not, Emmanuel Macron was not there. And for that, this president of the France and PM Modi had been awarded by UNEP also in the United Nations for taking this initiative. Headquarters is in Gurgaon. Everyone knows it has currently 67 member countries which have signed and ratified the ISA framework agreement. They have signed and ratified in their countries. So this is all in today's lecture. See you tomorrow, and tomorrow also a few topics from June environment will be done in the detailed way. Then we can move to July environment month. Thank you.